December 6, 2011. We're here at On the Spot. To my right, political analyst of On the Spot, Stephen Thompson. Far right, Saquan Jones. Our first subject is Occupy Wall Street comes to Brooklyn.
Hey, they occupied Pennsylvania Avenue, 1,500 strong, walked down Pennsylvania Avenue in protest to foreclosures in the community, or as we say so affectionately, in the hood.
Steve, I don't know why you keep this thing going. I mean, the only thing sort of more useless than this is the West Indian Day Parade.
Oh, my goodness.
According to our finest, our New York City police officers, this is the only thing that I don't understand. I actually, when we bring this subject up,
you still don't understand what is going on.
So you saying there's no purpose for Occupy Wall Street?
There's no purpose for occupying Wall Street in Brooklyn. Like, what are they doing here? I mean, I understand, from where I understand, they stopped some foreclosures from happening.
So last week it was, I don't understand their message. So this week they go to do something specific, which has to do with the bank's consistent issue of foreclosing on people, working people,
speeding up the process.
They are prolonging the system,
the pain
from fleshing itself out.
From fleshing itself.
Oprah Winfrey once said, right? Somebody asked Oprah Winfrey, and I think I brought this up at another show, is if you have a ton of money,
right?
You know, why don't you give away some of your money to some other people who needed help or need to be able to pay their bills? And she said that I don't do that because they don't learn the lesson. And this is what's going to happen continuously. Throughout history, there are three ways that we get out of economic uncertainty.
Okay.
One is imperialism.
Right.
One is by doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is, I'm having a Rick Perry.
Well, it's all right. He's having a Rick
Perry. And the other, I got it already.
You was coming out.
We're back on train.
The other way is to enforce government regulations.
Right.
Imperialism is, obviously, you go in, create war, take over a whole bunch of stuff. Now you open up a new market.
But
second thing is you in government through regulations. You try to do what we're doing now. And the third thing is to do nothing. I think that we should just do nothing, because you know why we should do nothing is that when you do nothing, the cream always rises to the top.
Well, he had his point. So let's talk about the history, and some go back to the issue of.
And wait, let me just say that we're stopping the cream from rising to the top.
Well, here's the issue.
There's
a lot of cream that was added to the coffee when they removed the Glass-Steagall Act. Now, the little history is for our audiences. It had to be a regulating function to make sure that people who got mortgages were able to pay them back. When you remove that, the banks took a responsibility to look at the type of paperwork and give a loan. Now, what they've proved that those banks didn't do that.
Of course.
So what about the people, Steve? Listen, what about the people?
But you know what? Here's the issue. Here's what we got. Government sometimes does a very powerful thing. It is implemented in making sure that milk is not bad. And a government serves that purpose. So when the regulation was taken away, some people, now, and I'm going to tell you, I used to be a banker. I know. I've stopped a lot of people from getting mortgages that didn't want or should not have them, because at the time I was a banker, the Glass-Steagall Act was in force. But when they took it away, banks had an incentive to do things that they shouldn't have done.
Unscrupulous.
Listen, I'm a true-blooded Democrat. Right? There's no way I'm gonna ever vote
with a red
for
hat.
No, I'm a social liberal.
Right.
But a fiscal moderate, which means that I'm for everything from gay marriage to a woman's right to choose.
Okay, the libertarian.
So then now I'm also a fiscal moderate, means that I don't want our government to be spending a whole bunch of money without.
This is true.
But we're
the
spending more money.
People have to be responsible.
Right.
For their actions.
But
you have a child.
But it was the banks who made these decisions when they had the ability
and the people,
to say,
the banks didn't say
but when you have a woman who's, let's say, nothing wrong with being a domestic, but when you come into the bank and you say, I want to buy this $500,000 home, you may want to do that, but the bank will say no.
But you're not supposed to be able to do it.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, that's
banks. But
you're blaming the bank for allowing somebody who's free will to do
controls. They were under an incentivized idea to generate mortgages because they're gonna get the fees.
That's what capitalism is.
Yeah, but you got at some point the government has we know that we want.
All right, so let's get back to it.
Right.
How does this stop anything from happening in Occupy Wall Street? How does Occupy Wall Street stop this?
One, you brought light to these matters. Two, you've changed the whole election, the presidential election topic on what needs to be spoken on.
Today, President Obama mentioned the idea of inequity. Where does that come from? That comes from in the present day Occupy Wall Street that now people are saying...
Explain inequity.
Okay, well, he's pointing out that classically the United States shouldn't be a place where we have so much divide between the rich and the poor. That's what he's saying. I'm just saying what he's saying. No. So the key here is they have put what we said last show. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine somebody coming up with a movement in 2-3 months and having the president of the United States, this is the most powerful man, unarguable.
Yeah, it's called the Tea Party.
Well, he wasn't. The
Tea Party the Tea Party took longer to deal with than
Norm is a good team.
They have like 8 representatives.
Yeah, but you got
in Congress, in the House. They have like 4 senators. Like, are you saying? Within 2 years.
But are we saying that Occupy Wall Street had that kind of money to fund it?
Canada? Of course not. Through all this.
You keep saying that.
It's not in the best interest of media to show that these individuals are being funded.
Yeah, but
they are being funded, Steve. They are being funded, Norm.
By whom? What do you call funded as opposed to the Tea Party?
It's all right. I'll give you a funding example. The Koch brothers.
Right.
One entity funded Tea Parties, right? Now that's the Republican side of it.
Right.
That's the Republican side of it. The Occupy Wall Street would be like the Obama side of it. A kabillion people giving $2-3 to a movement, as opposed to 1 to 10 entities giving a kabillion dollars to a movement. But it still, at the end of the day, equals the same amount.
One of the key issues that comes out, you say in Brooklyn. If in fact these individuals in Brooklyn feel the relevance to Occupy Wall Street because they're suffering, and it's a residential working class neighborhood, and they're having problems with these. So separate from what I'm saying is,
Steve, I know it's after the fact, but they weren't occupying Wall Street when they were signing off.
But here's an issue.
On the loan documentation, were they?
Exactly.
They were loving Wall Street then. They were loving the legislation then.
But
now they're about to be kicked out of the house.
As a banker, what you actually told him again, and we'll say it again.
Right.
It was illegal.
Illegal?
What they were doing was illegal.
They're underwriting.
You allowed paperwork to be forged.
Was absurd. And that's a big word to say. They just let anybody come through. That means that the banks were in error. They were in error.
I feel like I feel somehow that y'all making this like
so the banks
almost a racial thing.
No, it's not. This is not racial.
They have people in Texas and Las Vegas in predominantly white neighborhoods.
So,
if you go to Las Vegas on the scheme of things, and Florida. Mm-hmm. These people have homes. There is an amazing tract that they're all foreclosed. Majority white folk. So what are you saying? And this is a national issue.
We're not talking racial, but what am I asking you a question? The banks had no fault, and this is what you're telling me?
I'm not saying that they don't have a
fault. But I'm asking you, did the banks have a very
just like Steve is a banker, I work in numbers, right?
Yes.
So I like to define things in sort of, in 100% increments.
Fair.
Banks, 25%, individuals, 75%.
Oh, come on.
So how did they get the loan? Because they couldn't have...
The 75% of the fact is the fact that you had an individual who has papers in front of him, just like all of us right now.
But the bank
decided Saquan, if we go back to the bank, I'm a housekeeper, and I come in with a $500,000 home, and I'm only making maybe $40,000.
Oh, so the bank knows that, right?
Yeah, but why would the bank go through?
Right?
Yeah, but if I can come in, I could say anything.
Because
I'd like a $20 million home.
That homeowner, I'll give you this rate here.
Right.
And in 2 years, you'll be able to go in and gave you adjustable arm. Right. And in 2 years, they told you will now be able to get a new mortgage at a lower rate.
There you go.
What they didn't tell you is even if you paid your bill, because what they did tell you was all you got to do is pay your bill on time. And your interest, your whole payments on time, and you will have no problem getting another
loan. And on that level.
And guess what? 2 years came up. And when it was over with, guess what happened? That adjustable arm that they lied to you about?
They did not lie. They didn't anticipate that there would be.
We got to close it out. But clearly there's an issue, and you say it was not. But people keep coming back to it. But we got to close out.
Let's close this out. We're going to be right back after a brief message. Pay the bills.